Well, hello and welcome to the Deluxe Mixing Podcast. Welcome back. If you're returning, you masochists, and hello if it's your first time. Well, it's another story episode today, I'm afraid. And this one is about one of the times I engineered for Amy Winehouse. The uncredited story of Between the Cheats. So this week, I finally got resolution on something that had been a thorn in my side for quite some time. Before I was a mixing engineer, I was, that's right, just an engineer. The kind that worked in studios for a living, making records and engineering for artists, labels, and producers. The kind that you had to be before you could magically get the title of mixing engineer if you eventually specialized and reached those dizzy heights. At the end of the 2000s, one of these clients was none other than Amy Winehouse, who was, as they say, going through some things and trying to get it together with a view to making a new record. Now, our studio, situated outside the noise and hustle and bustle of London, was known as a place where an artist could enter the old school studio world. It was a private place where you could be yourself in total seclusion and safety. It wasn't fancy at all, but you could live there, and it was a place where nobody would bother you. I'm sometimes asked why I don't have more photos and stuff of sessions and clients. Well, in those days, when Instagram was really just about pretty photos, it was considered unacceptable in our world to violate people's privacy, especially the artists. What happened in the studio stayed in the studio. In fact, that time, especially for her, things were so insane you can't imagine. There was a line of paparazzi cars illegally on the private road leading to the studio, stationed outside there 24/7. Some of these guys were even brave enough to try and sneak onto the private property that the studio was on, chancing their luck to try and take some pictures. Well, we usually caught them and they ran for their lives. Not really part of the job that you really think about when you discover the magic of the studio and decide you want a career recording, right? Well, people came and went. Mark Ronson came and got frustrated as the Bond movie theme we were supposed to be making clearly wasn't happening. And that's another story. Amy really just wanted to make a jazz album and didn't give a fuck about Bond. That's how big she was at that moment in time. One morning, after a period of not a lot happening, a car showed up with a driver. Out popped a chilled, relaxed guy who turned out to be Salaam Remi, the producer of half of Back to Black. He brought a keyboard, a guitar, a Hofner violin, Beatle bass, and a great attitude. The studio itself was owned by a legendary British drummer called Barry Barlow, who played with everyone from Jethro Tull to Robert Plant to even Yngwie, believe it or not, at some point. So we had drums down. I'd already set the drums up and got busy getting everyone else ready. I was a little nervous as there was no sign of our diva, but Salaam said, "I don't care what time the artist wants to get to work. I'm walking out of here with a song today. I want to get it done, go have something to eat, and watch a movie." Well, yep, I'd found a new hero. Amy came downstairs, sat on Salaam's lap, sweet as you like, and was obviously super happy he was there. A noticeable change in her mood. She then showed him the bones of a new song, something clearly about her relationship with Blake, who was serving time in jail at that moment. I can't express how thoroughly nice she was. Everybody always talks about all this crazy stuff, but you know, it was so surreal to have someone like that repeatedly asking you if they could make you a cup of tea. She was lovely. We set up a click. He went into the booth and played a simple pattern for a few minutes on the kit, turned to me and said, "Find me some good bars." And so I did, and I looped them. We repeated the process with some bass, keys, and other things. Find me some bars. And at some point, another drummer showed up who listened through to what we had so far and then replayed the whole song, perhaps going through it maybe twice, and he was done. Sometimes it just cracks me up how nerdy we engineers get about what was recorded with what, and I honestly believe you could have put any mic in front of Amy and she would have sounded amazing. Engineering for someone like Amy Winehouse at that point, for me, could have been stressful, but I can only think of a handful of times I've ever heard someone just that naturally good in person. She opened her mouth and what you hear is what came out. Salaam told me he used a U67 and the inputs on his Digi 002 for the last record, so I figured my chain was going to be pretty fine. And it was pretty cool standing 2 feet away from her, moving and adjusting the mic and hearing that voice up close. We redid a couple of things as the structure came together, and then a small posse of singers arrived who did all these doo-wop harmony parts. It was super relaxed and fun, and the kind of session that didn't really feel like work. Towards the end of the day, I asked Salaam if he was staying the night. He enthusiastically shook his head no, looking terrified, maybe not quite ready to spend the night in the creepy English woods in the middle of nowhere. So, when we finished, I copied the drive, helped him pack, and then off he went back to the safety of London, never to be seen again. Now, as we know, not long after that, tragedy struck and we lost Amy. Several years later, a bunch of songs came out on the posthumous album Lioness, Hidden Treasures, and one of them was a song called Between the Cheats. Listening to the finished record, I hear they worked more on it back in the States, added some horns, changed the chorus BVs a little bit, and so on, but it was definitely the same recording. Now, the Lioness record credits the studio, but I personally was never credited directly, which is very frustrating, because who else could have engineered it? Eventually, after years, I reached out and confirmed with Salaam it was indeed the same version. And as cool as he ever was, he said to grab the credits wherever I could. He just couldn't remember my name when Universal put the credits list together. And that, my readers, is how sometimes you end up working on records you can't prove you actually did for a while. It was early days for me then, and since I've racked up something like 900 credits during other assorted studio misadventures. If you'd like to work with me, with my kind of experience on your music, just reach out. I'm always looking for great artists to work with. Just do me a favor and remember to credit me, okay? As ever, I'd love to hear your comments, and especially if you have any suggestions for topics I could cover in future episodes. Well, thank you again, and I'll see you next time on the next episode of The Pod.